Hi, 26F. Never expected my 26th birthday to become the day my sister Sarah, 28F, destroyed herself with her own cruelty. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. The signs were always there, hidden behind her perfect smile and her constant need to remind everyone how successful she was. But on that October evening, sitting at our parents' dining room table with cake and candles waiting, I had no idea that Sarah's gift would become the very weapon that would bring her down. The dinner started like every family gathering we'd had for years. Mom had cooked my favorite meal. Dad had picked up the chocolate cake from the bakery downtown. And Sarah had arrived fashionably late, as always. She walked through the door carrying a large gift bag, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor like she owned the place. Her designer dress probably cost more than my monthly rent, and she made sure everyone noticed it. "Happy birthday, little sister," she said, setting the bag down with a flourish that drew everyone's attention. "I hope you like what I got you. I spent a lot of time thinking about what you really needed." Mom smiled, and Dad nodded approvingly, both of them always eager to see Sarah's generous gifts. She had a reputation in our family for giving expensive presents, though there was always something off about the way she did it. Like she was keeping score, making sure everyone knew exactly how much she'd spent and how thoughtful she'd been. But this time felt different. There was something in her eyes, a glint of satisfaction that made my stomach turn. We sat down to eat first, and Sarah dominated the conversation as usual. She talked about her promotion at the tech company where she worked, about the new clients she'd landed, about the business trips to exotic locations. Every story somehow circled back to how successful she was, how busy, how important. When Mom asked about my job at the marketing agency, Sarah cut in before I could answer. "Oh, she's still at that little startup, aren't you?" she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "It must be nice not having real pressure or responsibility. Some people just aren't cut out for the corporate world." I forced a smile and took another bite of my food, letting the comment slide. This was my birthday dinner, and I wasn't going to let her ruin it. Dad tried to change the subject, asking about the weather forecast. "Could say anything worse." Sarah stood up and retrieved the gift bag, carrying it over to me with exaggerated ceremony. The bag was heavy, and I could tell something substantial was inside. For a brief moment, I felt a flutter of excitement. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe she'd actually gotten me something thoughtful without the usual strings attached. "Go ahead, open it," she said, standing over me like she was presenting an award. I reached into the bag and pulled out a brand new laptop, still in its box. It was a high-end model, the kind I'd been saving up for but couldn't quite afford yet. My eyes widened, and I looked up at her in genuine surprise. "Sarah, this is too much," I said, running my fingers over the box. She waved her hand dismissively. "Don't thank me yet. Let me explain why I got it for you." Here it comes, I thought. There's always a catch with Sarah. "I bought this because I pity you," she said, her words cutting through the room like a knife. Mom gasped. Dad set down his fork. I felt my face burning with humiliation. "I see you struggling with that ancient computer you have," Sarah continued, clearly enjoying herself. "And I realize that maybe part of why your career isn't going anywhere is because you don't have the right tools. So I thought, as your successful older sister, I should help you out. Think of it as charity, but from family." The word charity hit me like a slap. I stared at the laptop box in my hands, suddenly wanting to throw it across the room. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not with my parents watching, not on my birthday. So I did what I always did when Sarah acted like this. I swallowed my pride and stayed quiet. "That's a very generous gift," Mom said weakly, trying to salvage the moment. "It really is," Sarah agreed, completely missing or ignoring the discomfort in Mom's voice. "I just hate seeing her struggle so much. It's embarrassing, honestly. When my colleagues ask what my sister does, I have to make excuses for why she's still at entry level after all these years." I set the laptop down carefully on the table, my hands shaking slightly. "Thank you for the gift, Sarah," I managed to say, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. You're welcome. Call. And somehow the phone was on speaker mode. Maybe she'd hit the wrong button in her nervousness, or maybe it was just karma finally catching up with her. Either way, we could all hear everything. Sarah, where the hell are you? The voice on the other end was sharp and angry. And more importantly, where is the laptop for the client presentation tomorrow? Sarah's voice came from the kitchen, muffled but audible. Jessica, I can explain. You were supposed to pick it up from IT this afternoon, Jessica continued, her frustration mounting. I've been calling you for 3 hours. The client meeting is at 9 tomorrow morning, and we need that laptop with all the presentation materials loaded on it. My parents and I exchanged glances. The laptop. The brand new, high-end laptop sitting on our dining room table. The company paid $1,500 for that specific model because the client requested it. Jessica's voice continued through the speaker. If we don't have it tomorrow, we're going to lose this deal. Do you understand what that means, Sarah? This client is the only thing keeping us from massive budget cuts. Sarah's voice from the kitchen sounded panicked now. I'll have it there, Jessica. I promise. You better, Jessica said. Because if this deal falls through, the board is going to start looking at which positions to eliminate. And considering your performance review last quarter, you should be very concerned about having this laptop ready. The line about the performance review made me lean forward. Sarah, who never stopped talking about how successful she was, had gotten a bad review? This isn't just about one presentation, Sarah, Jessica continued, her voice getting louder. The company is hemorrhaging money. We're 6 months away from bankruptcy if we don't land this client. Every single person's job is on the line, including mine, including yours. Sarah must have realized then that her phone was still on the table, still on speaker, because we heard her footsteps running back toward the dining room. But Jessica wasn't done. And if I find out you've done something stupid with that laptop, if you've lost it or damaged it or given it away, I swear to God, Sarah, I will not only fire you on the spot, I will make sure everyone knows exactly why. Your reputation in this industry will be destroyed. Sarah burst back into the expression had hardened into something I rarely saw. And I sat there, pieces clicking into place in my mind. Sarah, I said slowly, is this laptop from your company? Don't be ridiculous, she said, but her voice cracked. I bought that for you. With your company's money? Dad asked, his tone sharp. No, I would never. But she couldn't finish the sentence. The truth was written all over her face. I stood up, picking up the laptop box. So let me understand this correctly. You took a laptop that your company bought for a crucial client presentation, brought it here, and gave it to me as a gift? A gift that you specifically said you bought because you pity me. Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. For once in her life, she had no words. And your company is about to go bankrupt? I continued, my voice getting stronger. Your job is on the line? After all those stories about how successful you are, how important, how busy with all your big deals. You don't understand, she started, but I cut her off. No, I understand perfectly. You stole from your company to humiliate me. You took something that wasn't yours and used it to make yourself feel superior. And now your manager is threatening to fire you and destroy your reputation. Mom stood up, her face a mix of disappointment and anger. Sarah, how could you do this? It's not what it looks like, Sarah insisted, but her voice was desperate now. I was going to return it. I just wanted to, I thought. You thought what? Dad asked. That you could use company property to hurt your sister's feelings and then return it like nothing happened? Sarah turned to me, and for the first time in years, I saw real fear in her eyes. You have to give it back. Please. I need that laptop. I looked at her, this sister who had spent years making me feel small, worthless, unsuccessful, who had just minutes ago called me a failure, an embarrassment, who had given me a stolen gift specifically to hurt me. You know what, Sarah? I said, my voice calm and steady. You can have it back. Not because I want to help you, but because I don't want anything from you, especially not your pity. Next round of layoffs. Mom sat back down heavily. So all those stories about promotions and success? I did get promoted, Sarah said defensively, a year ago. But since then, things have been difficult. And you thought stealing from your company to hurt your sister would somehow make things better? Dad asked. Sarah had no answer for that. She grabbed the laptop box, hugging it to her chest like a life preserver. I think you should leave, I said quietly. Take the laptop back to your office. Try to save your job. But don't come back here until you're ready to apologize. Really apologize, not just make excuses. Sarah looked around the room, searching for support but found none. Mom wouldn't meet her eyes. Dad's expression was stone. And I stood there, finally standing up to the sister who had made me feel inferior for so long. This is all your fault, she said to me, her voice venomous. If you hadn't been listening to my private conversation. Your phone was on speaker in the middle of our dining room, I reminded her, and you're the one who stole from your company. You're the one who's been lying to everyone. You're the one who said you pity me. So no, Sarah, this is not my fault. This is what happens when you build your whole life on lies and cruelty. She stood there for another moment, clutching the laptop, her perfect designer dress now looking like a costume she'd worn to play a part. Then, without another word, she turned and left. We heard her heels clicking down the hallway, the front door slamming, her car starting and pulling away. Mom, Dad, and I sat in silence for a long moment. The birthday cake still sat on the counter, untouched. The dinner on our plates had gone cold. But something in the air had changed. The dynamic that had existed for years, where Sarah dominated and I submitted, where she hurt and I stayed quiet, was broken. I'm sorry, Mom said finally, tears in her eyes. We should have said something years ago. The way she treats you, we knew it wasn't right. Dad nodded. We always thought it was just sibling rivalry, that you two would work it out. But this, we never imagined she'd go this far. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. She's always been this way. You just never wanted to see it. You're right. Text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I realized it was from Jessica, Sarah's manager. Your sister told me everything, the message read. I wanted to apologize that you got caught up in this. Sarah has been terminated from the company, effective immediately. We cannot tolerate theft, regardless of the circumstances. I'm sorry your birthday was ruined. I stared at the message, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Part of me felt satisfied that Sarah had finally faced consequences for her actions. But another part, a small part, felt sad for the sister I'd once hoped she could be. My phone buzzed again. This time it was from Sarah. I hope you're happy. You've ruined my life. I almost laughed at the irony. She had ruined her own life. She had chosen to steal. She had chosen to be cruel. She had chosen to use a stolen laptop as a weapon to hurt me. And now, she wanted to blame me for the consequences. I didn't respond to her text. There was nothing to say. She would either learn from this or she wouldn't. But either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. The next few weeks were strange. Sarah didn't come to family dinners. She didn't call. According to Mom, who heard through mutual friends, she'd moved back in with her ex-boyfriend and was frantically looking for a new job. But word had gotten out about why she'd been fired, and no company in her industry would touch her. Meanwhile, my life continued as normal. I went to work at my little startup, which was actually doing quite well. What Sarah never knew, because she never asked, was that I'd been promoted twice in the past year. I was leading a team now, working on campaigns for major brands. I was making good money, enough that I'd been able to start saving for a house, but I'd stopped sharing my successes with her long ago because she always found a way to diminish them. A month after the birthday disaster, I got another text from Sarah. This one was longer, more thoughtful. She said she'd been doing a lot of thinking, that she'd started seeing a therapist, that she was beginning to understand how toxic she'd become. She asked if we could meet for coffee. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to let her suffer the way she'd made me suffer for years. But another part of me, the part that remembered the sister who used to braid my hair and tell me bedtime for the pity comment, especially. That was cruel, and you didn't deserve it. I listened, sipping my coffee, waiting to see if there was more. I've been so focused on appearing successful that I forgot what actual success means, she continued. I thought if I could make you look like a failure, it would somehow make me more of a success. But all it did was make me a terrible sister and a terrible person. Why? I asked, the question I'd wanted to ask for years. Why did you need to hurt me to feel good about yourself? Sarah stared into her coffee cup for a long moment. I was jealous, she admitted. You were always so confident in yourself, so comfortable with who you are. You never needed external validation the way I did. Mom and Dad were proud of you for just being you, while I felt like I had to constantly achieve something to get their attention. That's not true, I said. They were always proud of you. But I couldn't see it, she said. I was so caught up in my own insecurity that I projected it onto everyone else, especially you. I thought if I could make you doubt yourself the way I doubted myself, we'd be even somehow. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation. And for the first time, I saw Sarah not as my cruel, successful older sister, but as someone deeply insecure and lost. I don't know if we can fix this, I said honestly. You hurt me for years, Sarah. You made every family gathering a minefield. You turned what should have been celebrations into opportunities for humiliation. I know, she said, tears starting to form in her eyes. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm going to try to be better. We finished our coffee in relative silence. When we got up to leave, Sarah hesitated. For what it's worth, she said, I heard about your promotion. The real one. Not the story I made up in my head. Mom told me you're running an entire department now. That's amazing. Thanks, I said, and I meant it. It was the first time she'd ever acknowledged my success without trying to diminish it. Also, she added with a small, sad smile, I found out the laptop thing became sort of infamous in the tech world. I'm basically a cautionary tale now. Years, she was working with underprivileged kids, teaching them basic computer skills. When she told me about it at Mom's birthday dinner, the first family gathering she'd attended since the laptop incident, there was no bragging, no comparison to my job, just genuine excitement about the work she was doing. One of my students reminds me of you, she said. She's quiet, but really smart. She just needs someone to believe in her. That's great, I said, and found that I meant it. Dad raised his glass. To new beginnings, he said, looking pointedly at both of us. We all raised our glasses, even Sarah and me. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. Later that night, as I was helping Mom clear the dishes, she pulled me aside. I'm proud of you, she said, for standing up to her that night, for being willing to meet with her after everything, for giving her a chance to change. I'm not sure I've given her a chance, I said. I'm just not actively shutting her out. Sometimes that's all we can do, Mom said. Leave the door open a crack and see if the person on the other side is willing to do the work to come through it properly. As I drove home that night, I thought about the laptop. That stupid, expensive laptop that had changed everything. Sarah had meant it as a weapon, a tool to hurt me and make herself feel superior. But instead, it had become the catalyst that exposed her lies and forced our family to confront years of dysfunction. In a strange way, I was grateful for it. Not for the hurt it was meant to cause, but for the change it had brought about. Without that laptop, Sarah might have continued her toxic behavior for years more. I might have continued to accept it. Our parents might have continued to enable it. 6 months after the birthday disaster, I actually did buy myself a new laptop. I'd saved up for it, paid for it with my own money from the job Sarah had belittled. When she saw it at the next family gathering, she asked about it. Nice laptop, she said, and there was no sarcasm in her voice. Thanks, I replied. I bought it myself, no pity required. She flinched at the reference to her cruel words but nodded. You never needed anyone's pity. I think I was the one who needed it all along. It was the most honest. Didn't press. Later, I overheard Sarah telling him an abbreviated version of the laptop story. She didn't minimize her role or make excuses. She owned it completely. "That's why my sister and I are still working on our relationship," she said. "I hurt her badly, and trust takes time to rebuild." It was another step forward. Small, but significant. As the second anniversary of the laptop incident approached, I found myself reflecting on everything that had changed. Sarah had lost her high-paying job, but found meaningful work. She'd lost her sense of superiority, but gained humility. She'd lost my trust, but was slowly, carefully, trying to earn it back. And me? I'd gained my voice. I'd learned to stand up for myself, to stop accepting poor treatment just to keep the peace. My career had continued to flourish, but more importantly, I'd flourished. I was more confident, more assertive, more willing to demand respect. The laptop incident had been a catalyst for everyone. Mom and Dad had learned to stop enabling toxic behavior. Sarah had been forced to confront her insecurities and cruelty, and I had finally broken free from the role of the accepting victim. On my 28th birthday, 2 years after the laptop incident, Sarah arrived at my birthday dinner with a small, wrapped gift. I tensed, remembering the last time she'd brought me a birthday present. "Don't worry," she said, seeing my expression. "I actually bought this one, with my own money, from a store. I have the receipt if you want to see it." The attempt at humor helped ease the tension. I unwrapped the gift to find a simple picture frame. Inside was an old photo of us as children, probably 7 and 9 years old, hugging and laughing at some long-forgotten joke. "I found this while going through my old things," she said. "It reminded me of when we actually liked each other." I thought maybe it could remind us both that we were sisters before we became competitors. It was thoughtful without being over the top, sentimental without being manipulative. It was, I realized, the first gift she'd given me in years that came without strings attached. "Thank you," I said, and meant it. "You're welcome," she replied. Then, after a pause, "And happy birthday. I'm glad you were born, even if forever?" But there was no point in dwelling on what-ifs. The laptop incident had happened, and it had changed everything. Sarah's moment of cruel triumph had become her downfall, but also, in a strange way, her salvation. She'd lost her job and her reputation, but she'd gained self-awareness and the chance to become a better person. And me? I'd received the strangest birthday gift of my life, a stolen laptop wrapped in an insult. But what I'd really received was freedom. Freedom from the toxic dynamic that had defined my relationship with my sister for so long. Freedom to stand up for myself. Freedom to demand better. The laptop had been meant as a symbol of my failure and Sarah's success. Instead, it became a symbol of truth conquering lies, of consequences catching up with cruelty, of a family finally confronting its dysfunction. Sarah had said she bought it because she pitied me, but in the end, she was the one who needed pity. She was the one living a lie, stealing to maintain an image, so insecure that she needed to hurt others to feel good about herself. I didn't pity her, though. Pity would have meant looking down on her the way she'd looked down on me. Instead, I felt something more complex, a mixture of sadness for the relationship we'd lost, hope for the relationship we might build, and relief that the truth had finally come out. The laptop incident had been painful, humiliating, and shocking, but it had also been necessary. It had forced all of us to confront truths we'd been avoiding, to change patterns we'd been perpetuating, to demand better from ourselves and each other. 2.5 years after that fateful birthday dinner, I was promoted to vice president of my department. It was a huge achievement, one that came with a significant raise and a lot of new responsibilities. When I told my family at Sunday dinner, Sarah was the first to congratulate me. "That's incredible," she said, and her smile seemed genuine. "You've worked so hard for this." "Thanks," I said, still getting used to this new version of my sister who could celebrate my successes instead of trying to diminish them. "We should celebrate," Mom suggested. "Maybe go out to that nice restaurant downtown?" "Actually," Sarah said, Let me cook dinner for everyone. I've been taking classes and I'd love to make some. They were simple words, but they were words I'd never thought I'd hear from her. Not sincerely, anyway. And looking at her face, at the genuine pride and happiness there, I believed her. After dinner, as we were cleaning up, she pulled me aside. "I need to tell you something," she said. "I've been offered a position at another nonprofit. It's a step up, more responsibility, better pay. Not tech industry money, but good for the nonprofit world." "That's great, Sarah," I said. "You should be proud." "I am," she said. "But here's the thing. During the interview process, they asked about why I left my previous tech job. I told them the truth. All of it. The laptop, the theft, getting fired. I thought for sure it would disqualify me, but the director said she appreciated my honesty and my obvious growth since then." "Wow," I said, genuinely impressed. "That took courage." "It took therapy," she laughed. "Lots and lots of therapy. But I figured if I was going to move forward, I had to own my past, not hide from it." It was another sign of how much she'd changed. The old Sarah would have lied, made excuses, painted herself as a victim. This Sarah owned her mistakes and was trying to build something better from them. As I drove home that night, I thought about forgiveness. I hadn't explicitly forgiven Sarah for years of cruelty and that final, terrible birthday gift. But somehow, gradually, the anger had faded. It hadn't disappeared entirely, might never disappear entirely, but it had softened into something manageable. Sarah had said she bought that laptop because she pitied me, but what she'd really been saying was that she feared me. Feared that my happiness and quiet success meant her flashy success wasn't enough. Feared that if I was doing okay, it somehow diminished her achievements. Feared that there wasn't enough success in the world for both of us. The laptop had been her weapon in a war I hadn't even known I was fighting. But it had backfired spectacularly, exposing not my failures but hers. Not my inadequacy but hers. Not my need for pity but hers. 3 years after the laptop incident, on my 29th birthday, Sarah arrived at my party with another gift. This time, there was no tension when she handed it to me, no fear about what it might represent. Inside was a beautiful leather journal, but we'd both done the work. Sarah in therapy, confronting her insecurities and need for superiority. Me in learning to stand up for myself, to demand respect, to not accept poor treatment for the sake of keeping peace. Our parents had done their own work too, learning to recognize toxic behavior and not enable it, to support both their daughters equally without comparing them or pitting them against each other. The laptop had started it all, that stolen, ill-intended gift that was meant to humiliate me. Instead, it had exposed the truth, forced a reckoning, and ultimately led to healing. Sarah had lost her job because of that laptop. She'd lost her reputation in the tech industry. She'd lost the false image she'd built of herself as the successful older sister looking down on her failure of a sibling. But she'd gained so much more. She'd gained self-awareness, humility, genuine relationships, meaningful work, and eventually, slowly, carefully, she'd gained back her sister. And me? I'd gained my voice. I'd gained confidence. I'd gained the ability to stand up for myself. I'd gained freedom from a toxic relationship dynamic. And eventually, I'd gained a sister who could celebrate my successes instead of trying to destroy them. The laptop incident would always be part of our story. It was the rock bottom that forced change, the crisis that became a catalyst, the worst birthday gift that somehow became the best thing that could have happened to our family. Sarah never did fully explain what she'd been thinking that night, why she'd thought stealing from her company to hurt me was a good idea, how she'd justified it to herself. But I'd come to understand that she probably couldn't explain it. Not really. It had been an act of desperation, from someone drowning in their own lies and insecurity. The pity she'd claimed to feel for me had really been projection. She'd pitied herself, her need for external validation, her inability to be happy for others, her compulsion to tear others down to build herself up. And in trying to make me an object of pity, she'd revealed herself as the truly pitiable one. But pity wasn't what she'd needed. She'd needed consequences. She'd needed truth. She'd needed to lose everything she'd built on lies in order to start building something real. 4 years after the laptop incident. Authenticity. Her ability to be happy without needing to prove anything to anyone. I tried to dim her light because I thought it would make mine shine brighter. I was wrong. So wrong. And on her 26th birthday, my cruelty finally caught up with me. She didn't go into details about the laptop, but she didn't need to. Most of the family knew the story by then. Losing my job was devastating, she continued, but losing my sister's trust was worse. I had to face who I'd become, and I didn't like what I saw. But my sister, being the person she is, left the door open for me to change. Not wide open, just cracked enough for me to prove I could be better. She'd raised her champagne glass then, turning to face me directly. So here's to you, on your wedding day. Thank you for giving me the chance to be here, to be part of this, to be your sister again. I love you, and I'm so proud of the woman you are. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. My husband, who'd heard the whole laptop story early in our relationship, squeezed my hand under the table. He'd been wary of Sarah at first, protective of me, but he'd come to see her genuine change over the years. Later at the reception, Sarah had pulled me aside during a quiet moment. I have something for you, she'd said, handing me a small wrapped box. A wedding gift, but also something else. Inside was a silver bracelet with a small laptop charm hanging from it. I'd looked up at her, confused. I know it's weird, she'd said quickly, but I had it made because that laptop changed everything. It was the worst thing I ever did, but it led to the best thing that ever happened to me. Getting caught, losing everything, it forced me to become a better person. And it gave me the chance to have you as my sister again. Real sister, not whatever toxic thing we were before. I'd hugged her then, both of us crying in the middle of my wedding reception, probably ruining our makeup. Only you would turn the worst birthday gift ever into a wedding present. I'd laughed through my tears. I figured we might as well own our weird history, she'd said. I wore the bracelet for the rest of the reception. Every time I looked at it, I was reminded not of the pain of that birthday, but of how far we'd come since. Failed as a leader in my own family. How I'd tried to lead through intimidation and cruelty instead of support and encouragement. I told them how losing everything taught me what real leadership looks like. What did they say? I'd asked. They said it showed growth and self-awareness. They said anyone who could learn that much from failure was someone who could lead others through their own challenges. The laptop story had become part of her narrative, not something she hid from, but something she'd learned from. She'd transformed her biggest failure into a teaching moment, her cruelty into a cautionary tale, her downfall into a rise toward something better. 6 years after that terrible birthday, we faced our first real test as rebuilt sisters. Dad had a heart attack. It was serious but not fatal, requiring surgery and a long recovery. Sarah and I had to work together to help Mom, to manage Dad's care, to make decisions about treatment. In the hospital waiting room during Dad's surgery, Sarah had reached for my hand. I'm scared, she'd admitted. Me too, I'd said, squeezing back. We'd sat there for hours, taking turns getting coffee, updating relatives, keeping Mom calm. There was no competition over who was the better daughter, no trying to one-up each other in our support. We were just sisters, unified in our fear and love for our father. When the surgeon came out to say Dad was okay, we'd hugged each other and cried. Real tears, real emotion, real sisterhood. During Dad's recovery, we'd created a schedule to help Mom with his care. Sarah took mornings before her work. I took evenings. On weekends, we'd both come over and cook meals for the week ahead. One Saturday, while chopping vegetables side by side in our parents' kitchen, Sarah had said, "This is nice. Working together like this." "It is," I'd agreed. I wasted so many years making us enemies," she'd said. "Years we could have been doing this, being real sisters." "We're doing it now," I'd pointed out. "That's what matters." Dad recovered fully, and the experience had brought our family even closer. The crisis that had once been a stolen laptop and a cruel gift had given way to real crises that we faced together. 7 years after the laptop incident, on my 33rd birthday, Sarah was built on lies. The real gift that came from that disaster was truth. Painful, necessary truth. She'd raised her glass. So here's to my sister on her birthday. Thank you for surviving my cruelty, for standing up to me when I needed to be stood up to, for giving me the chance to become someone worth being your sister. Happy birthday. Everyone had toasted, and I'd felt the full weight of how much had changed. The sister who'd once used my birthday as an opportunity to hurt me was now using it to celebrate me, to honor our journey, to acknowledge her growth and mine. Later that night, as the party wound down, Sarah had pulled me aside. "I have your actual gift," she'd said, handing me an envelope. Inside were 2 tickets to a week-long spa retreat, something I'd mentioned wanting to do months ago. "I thought we could go together," she'd said hopefully. "Sister's trip, but if you'd rather take someone else, I understand." "I'd love to go with you," I'd said, and meant it. The trip, taken a few months later, was perfect. We'd talked, laughed, shared stories we'd never shared before. We'd discussed our childhoods, our perspectives on family events, our dreams for the future. It was the kind of trip we should have been taking all along, the kind of sisterhood we should have had from the beginning. On the last night of the retreat, sitting on a balcony overlooking the ocean, Sarah had said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," I'd said. "Do you forgive me?" "Really, forgive me? Not just tolerate me or accept me, but actually forgive me?" I thought about it for a long moment. Forgiveness was such a complex thing, not a switch you could flip, but a process you worked through. "Yes," I'd said finally, "I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to that anger doesn't serve me anymore, and because you've shown real change. You're not the same person who gave me that laptop." She'd cried then, and I'd cried too. 7 years of healing had led to this moment, to real forgiveness, to genuine sisterhood. 8 years after the laptop incident, Sarah's nonprofit launched a program for young women in tech. She'd asked me to serve on the advisory board. "Why me?" I'd asked. Was so focused on more that I forgot about better. Being a better person, a better sister, a better leader. It took losing everything I thought meant success to learn what it really means. She'd looked at me in the audience. "My sister taught me that success isn't about climbing higher by pushing others down. It's about lifting others up as you climb. It's about celebrating others' achievements instead of feeling threatened by them. It's about building each other up instead of tearing each other down." The young women in the program had given her a standing ovation. I'd stood too, proud of the leader she'd become, the person she'd become, the sister she'd become. 9 years after that fateful birthday, our family faced another crisis. Mom was diagnosed with cancer. It was treatable, but would require months of chemotherapy and radiation. Sarah and I immediately went into action, creating schedules for treatment, researching doctors, organizing meal trains. There was no discussion about who would do what or who was doing more. We just did what needed to be done, supporting each other and our parents through the difficult journey. During one particularly hard chemotherapy session, Mom had looked at both of us sitting by her bedside and said, "I'm so proud of you girls, of how you've come together, of how you take care of each other now." "It took us long enough," Sarah had said wryly. "Better late than never," Mom had replied. "That laptop thing was awful, but look what came from it. Look at who you both became because of it." She was right. The laptop incident had been a catalyst for transformation. Sarah had transformed from a cruel, insecure person hiding behind false success to a genuine, humble leader making real difference. I'd transformed from someone who accepted poor treatment to someone who stood up for herself and demanded respect. Our family had transformed from one that enabled toxic behavior to one that faced truth and supported healthy growth. The laptop that was meant to divide us had ultimately united us. Mom recovered fully from her cancer, and the experience had only strengthened our bonds. Sarah and I had proven that we could handle real challenges together, that our rebuilt relationship could withstand pressure, that we were truly sisters again. 10 years after the laptop incident, on my 36th birthday, our family gathered for dinner as we did every year. But accept my cruelty anymore. You saved me, she continued. I was on a path to becoming someone terrible, someone who would have hurt many more people, someone who would have destroyed every relationship in her life. But you stopped me. You held up a mirror and forced me to see myself clearly. She handed me the box. So this is my gift to you. 10 years late, but hopefully worth the wait. Inside was a beautiful silver laptop-shaped locket. I opened it to find two pictures. One of us as children, happy and innocent, and one from last month, laughing at a family barbecue. From who we were, through what we became, to who we are now, Sarah said. The laptop that was meant to destroy us became the thing that saved us, and I wanted you to have something to remember that by. Something that transforms an ugly memory into something beautiful. I stood and hugged her, both of us crying again. Our family applauded, everyone understanding the weight of this moment, this anniversary, this transformation. You know what the funny thing is? I said, once I could speak again. That laptop you gave me? It really was a gift. Not the laptop itself, but what came from it. The truth, the change, the growth. You gave me the gift of a real sister, even if it took a while to unwrap it. Sarah laughed through her tears. Trust you to find the positive in the worst birthday gift ever. Well, it wasn't really the worst gift, I said. The worst gift was all those years of cruelty. The laptop was just the last straw that broke it all open. Dad raised his glass. To terrible gifts that lead to beautiful transformations. We all toasted, and I looked around the table at my family. Mom, healthy and smiling. Dad, recovered and strong. Sarah, transformed and genuine. Her husband, who'd only known the better version of her. My husband, who'd watched this whole journey unfold. 10 years ago, Sarah had said she pitied me. But I'd never needed her pity. What I'd needed was her respect, her support, her genuine sisterhood. It had taken a stolen laptop, a speakerphone mistake, and a complete breakdown of her false life to get there. But we'd made it. The laptop had been intended as a symbol of my failure, but it became a symbol of redemption. Sarah's redemption from cruelty to kindness. My redemption from silence to strength. Call. You did the work. You made the changes. You became better. We both did, she said. You became stronger and I became kinder. Maybe that's what we both needed all along. The birthday party continued late into the evening. Stories were shared, laughter filled the house, and love surrounded us all. It was everything a family gathering should be. Everything our gatherings hadn't been for so many years when they were poisoned by competition and cruelty. As I got ready to leave, Sarah handed me one more thing, a card. Inside, she'd written, 10 years ago, I said I pitied you. The truth was, I envied you. Your confidence, your authenticity, your ability to be happy without external validation. I thought if I could break those things in you, I'd feel better about lacking them myself. Instead, your strength in the face of my cruelty showed me what I was missing. Thank you for being the sister I needed, even when I wasn't the sister you deserved. Happy birthday. With love and respect, Sarah. I tucked the card into my purse next to the locket. Two gifts that acknowledged our past while celebrating our present. The laptop incident would always be part of our story, but it no longer defined us. We'd both grown beyond it, learned from it, transformed because of it. Driving home that night with my husband, I reflected on the journey. 10 years, a decade of growth, healing, setbacks, breakthroughs, and ultimately, redemption. The stolen laptop that was meant to humiliate me had become the catalyst for the most important transformation of our lives. Do you ever regret how it happened? My husband asked. Wish you could have had a normal sister relationship without all that drama? I thought about it. Sometimes. But then I wonder if we would have appreciated what we have now without going through that. If Sarah hadn't hit rock bottom, would she have changed? If I hadn't been pushed to my limit, would I have found my voice? Maybe we needed that dramatic catastrophe to break the toxic pattern. That's a very generous way to look at it, he said. Maybe. Or maybe it's just true. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the best things in disguise. That laptop was supposed to be about pity, but it became about truth. And truth, even painful truth, is always a better gift than a comfortable lie. Loving marriage, a healthy family, and a sister who'd transformed from my tormentor to my true friend. The laptop was long gone, returned to Sarah's company before she was fired. But what it had started remained. Every year on my birthday now, Sarah and I acknowledged it. The laptop anniversary, we called it. Not to dwell on the pain, but to celebrate how far we'd come. To remember that sometimes the worst gifts bring the best changes. That sometimes you have to lose everything false to find everything real. That night, lying in bed, I sent Sarah a text. Thank you for the laptop. It really was the gift that changed everything. She texted back immediately. Thank you for giving me the chance to become someone who could give you better gifts. And that was the truth of it. The laptop had been the worst gift, but the transformation it sparked had been the best. Sarah's cruelty had exposed itself and destroyed itself in one spectacular moment. And from those ashes, we'd built something better, something real, something worth celebrating. The sister who pitied me had become the sister who respected me. The sister who tried to humiliate me had become the sister who celebrated me. The sister who stole to hurt me had become the sister who gave genuinely to support me. And I'd become someone who didn't accept cruelty in the name of keeping peace. Someone who stood up for herself. Someone who could forgive without forgetting. Who could rebuild without ignoring the past. Who could love someone who'd hurt her while still demanding better. The laptop incident would always be our defining moment as sisters. Not because of the cruelty it represented, but because of the transformation it began. It was our rock bottom and our launching pad. Our worst moment and the beginning of our best years. 10 years ago, Sarah gave me a laptop and said she pitied me. Today, neither of us needed pity. We had each other, real and honest and supportive. We had the kind of sisterhood we should have had all along, earned through hard work and pain and growth. The laptop had been stolen. The gift had been cruel. The intent had been to harm. But sometimes the worst intentions lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes a curse becomes a blessing. Sometimes a birthday disaster becomes the gift of a lifetime. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person who says they pity you is really just showing you how much they need to change. Sarah had needed to change, and that disaster laptop. The chance for both of us to become who we were meant to be. Sisters. Real sisters. Finally.